Yeah,
Yep.
I'm happy to take over.
Yep.
We have a whole lot of questions and not very long time to answer them all. So I was hoping you'd start off by introducing NI Screen and your current policies and any new plans you have to encourage diversity or tackle abuse in the industry.
Rory, do you want to?
Yep. Well, for you, anyone who doesn't know, I'm Rory Clifford. I'm the interactive.
Oh, you've cut out there, Rory.
Sorry, that's me touching my keyboard, so I'll put my hand away. Sorry, I'll start again. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Rory Clifford, so I am the interactive manager at Northern Ireland Screen. I primarily looked after the video games and immersive sectors in Northern Ireland. Primarily looking after funding, but I also manage a Pixmill co-working space and have a responsibility in working with my colleagues in skills and education, around skills and education as well. Firstly, when it comes to bullying and harassment, this straight off the bat, like Northern Ireland Screen does not accept or any form of bullying and harassment at all within the wider screen industries, including the video game industry. And we have on our website standards of behavior that we expect not only just company owners, but freelancers and staff within those companies to adhere to on NI Screen funded projects. Nicola was heavily involved in the development of them, and she can speak in them more detail if people have specific questions around that there. If anyone has an issue around bullying and harassment within the screen sector and the video games industry, they can come to Northern Ireland Screen, and we can work with that individual to getting their complaint resolved. We do have powers. We do have the ability, if things get to the point where we can pull funding away from projects where it need to. And we are there to support individuals as well with whatever either support we can give as an agency where we have limited kind of powers, or where we can bring in or direct people towards the appropriate kind of agency or authority that can help further with any kind of particular issues. That's bullying and harassment. We can speak if people have specific questions. I know there's some specific questions in the chat, and we can pick up on that later on. Around equality, diversity, and inclusion, Northern Screen across the screen industries are working to create a more diverse workforce. I'm very much supportive of that within the interactive sector, and something that we are conscious of that we need to improve and are working on. We'll try and work towards that, both with whatever interventions we can do ourselves, but also working alongside the community and the industry, either taking pointers or advice, or bringing folks together to work together on particular topics. But we're just as fully committed to creating opportunities for everybody within the industry. And that's creating pathways through education, from primary school to secondary school, through to running a company or working in a company, right through to continued personal development. So we're committed to that whole pathway for a person in their career. Nicola, anything you want to add to anything I've just said there? You're on mute, by the way, Nicola.
In the mute button. No, just to bring everyone's attention to our bullying and harassment in the screen industries policy. It has been on our website now maybe 4 years. That's when we first started working with the NSPCC to develop these and to do training, so that there are 4 designated welfare officers within Northern Ireland Screen, of which I am one. About 4 or 5 months ago, we also pinned it to our front page because we were aware of sort of the talk in the general industry about bullying and harassment. Obviously, there were some high-profile stories, so we wanted to make sure everyone could see our policy on it. It's also contained in our code of practice. The code of practice is something that every company that Northern Ireland Screen funds must abide by. So they get copies of it. It's included in their contract, and it very clearly sets out. It's a very good document for people to look at, because you can click through to what we consider sort of like the key points that everyone should be aware of. It also states in that any company that is found to be breaking the law, or to have been proved to have bullying and harassment undertaken by them, we will unilaterally withdraw their funding. So, and it is in the contract that they must not break the law. So they must not break equality legislation. They must not break employment legislation. Any contravention of that, and we can withdraw funding. We will withdraw funding. What I would say is we need people to speak up. There has been a lot of talk in the press. And in fact, there was a fantastic broadcast story just a few days ago, which outlined, investigations undertaken by PACT and by the Film and TV charity. And what they were finding was that it's still very difficult to get people to come forward and actually make complaints. But what they did say is complaints can be anonymous, but it is much easier for anyone to investigate if the anonymity is waived, and they can be investigated. But I also have to point out, we are not an investigating authority. We do not have the right to do that. We can, however, point people in the right direction of where they need to go to and where they need to get the advice on how they can take out a proper complaint.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you could outline what the procedure is if someone does come to you with a complaint. What is the scope of the action you can actually take, and how would that play out from point of view of the person from first coming to you and then onwards?
Well, the first protocol actually should be the complaint should be made to the company that they work for. There will be occasions when the company is not the best place for the complainant to go. This would happen with small companies where the person who is the welfare officer or have the, who drew up the procedures may be the person that the complaint has been taken out against. So then they can come directly to us. All we can do is give advice on what to do next, and point them in the right direction. It's all on our website. We're adding to it all the time. There's whistleblowing lines. There is charities. There is Back2, if you're a member. And I think Ukie probably will eventually have some sort of helpline as well, that they can report these to. But yeah, by all means, you can come to Northern Ireland Screen and we will tell you what, and it will depend what the complaint is. Is it bullying and harassment, or is it a breach of employment legislation? Is it someone not being paid minimum wage? Is it someone whose invoice hasn't been paid? Is it a communication problem? So we will try to help the person resolve the issue. But if the issue isn't resolved satisfactorily, then we can point them in the direction of where they need to go next to take their complaint.
Okay, so in the hypothetical that it was gender-based bullying and harassment, how much of an investigation are you actually allowed to lead? You say you can take funding away from people, but how is that decided upon?
Yeah, we can't do the investigation ourselves, but we can tell them where to go. That sounds like it would be the Equality Commission, and the Equality Commission would need to do the investigation. If they're then found to be in breach of equality legislation, then we can withdraw funding.
Okay, so it relies on the findings of the Equality Commission as opposed to anything through NI Screen?
Yes, we're not an investigative authority. We're a sector development agency. And obviously we need everyone to abide, by all of our standards. We can't do the investigation. I'll give you an example of a case, in scripted TV where people did come to us because an agent was sexually harassing people. There was a body that we could point them in the direction of, the Employment Agency Inspectorate, and they did have investigative powers. Although the first thing that we advise people to do in that case, if it's sexual harassment, is report it to the police, and then they can go to whoever has the right to investigate that. Now we did sort of spearhead that and help out with that as much as we could. That agent was banned, but it's a matter of us helping the that people sort of find retribution and find out sort of what has been going on. But we're not an investigating agency. We don't have those powers.
Okay. Is there many examples of times where you've withdrawn funding after someone has been ruled to have been breaking law or ruled to have sexually harassed staff? Does that happen often within an ice cream?
I don't think so. Rory, has there been any cases in the interactive sector?
Not that I know of.
In the production sector, they're a little bit ahead, I think, of everyone else in that for 3-4 years now, the BFI have implemented their policies and procedures. We have our bullying and harassment procedures, and there's a designated person in every production. There are helplines within every production company, and that is the first port of call. If there is bullying and harassment going on, it needs to be reported to the people who are able to investigate it. So in those cases, there have been allegations on set. There have been things that have happened on set, but they have been resolved by going to the helplines and the designated welfare persons, people within the production. So we haven't had to withdraw funding because the productions have dealt with it correctly.
Okay. I was just going to move on then and ask, sorry, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
What have you done to educate people who are employed through grants by NI Screen on this procedure and who they can go to?
From my point of view, it's something I have to work more on. As stuff was brought up last week, not just in the wider industry, but to me directly. I went out to all company owners just last week. I made them clearly aware of their obligations towards the standards of behaviour. I made that clear. I understand that people would like more training, both from a company point of view, but also from individuals in terms of understanding their rights as an employee or freelancer. And it's something I'm actively looking into. If it's from a company point of view, do we look at, from a equality, diversity, inclusion point of view aspect, look at something that Ukie is doing, like the Raise the Game program, and getting involved in that there more directly? Is it from a training point of view? Do we, again, working with our colleagues at Ukie and taking some guidance from them, run effective workshops and what that looks like? But again, before I go down that equality, diversity, and inclusion, what should be done, I would like to get the opinions of folks who are affected by these issues and going, okay, what would be useful for you? And what do we want? What do we need to be telling company owners in terms of how they deal with that? From a bullying and harassment point of view, again, we have our standards on our website. There are work that can be done around either communication that I have with companies in terms of when we fund companies, making them fully aware from the outset about these standards, not just in a contract, but in a direct email, but also looking to work around, do we look at the likes of NSPCC and doing some workshops around that there? Or do we bring in the expertise around HR in terms of managing people in themselves, managing business structures? It also appears to be, again, freelancers and employees, helping them to educate themselves on their rights as employees and freelancers and how to operate. I had a chat with the folks at Back 2 yesterday. For those who don't know, Back 2 are a union that covers not just film and TV, but the breadth of the creative industries. And they offer, if you join their membership, like legal and support around issues like that there. But is there stuff that we can do even further beyond that in terms of preparing freelancers, not just ones in the field, ones working at the moment, but those who may be new entrants, in terms of preparing them for working life around financial training, understanding your employment law and stuff like that. So admittedly, some stuff has been done, not enough, and more can be done, and more will be done. And ideally in collaboration with folks who feel affected by these issues. Back to, I'll type it I'll send the link through the chat there now.
And in fact, if you look on the Back 2 site, their resources are absolutely outstanding from whistleblowing to bullying and harassment to equality and diversity, and also to labour relations, which a lot of these problems actually come down to labour relations, and they have so many resources. And also the helplines, the film and TV charity helpline will take calls and will also, they're like us, they can't investigate, but they can certainly direct people to where they need to go next. Is it a labour relations problem? Is it bullying and harassment? Where do they go? Who do they complain to? And they have had, you know, the brunt of the complaints that have come through the industry recently. And they said that most times it is a communication problem that can be resolved with mediation, but mediation is required. And I would certainly say that the smaller companies where it may be difficult to go to these people because you're working directly with them and the complaint may be against this person, the smaller companies need to be strongly encouraged to get some sort of HR function as an external, you know, consultant. They don't have to, you know, they may not be big enough to hire an HR person, but they need to have some sort of external HR consultancy that people can go directly to with an HR complaint, because, you know, a lot of the time it is HR as well. And yes, Kitty, Beck too is quite film and TV, but it also covers theatre and it does cover gaming.
I spoke to the rep yesterday, and they have a growing, it's still a relatively small number, but they have a growing number of members who are from the games industry, from London through to Dundee and stuff.
I know as part of the agreement on receiving funding from NI Screen, you have to have these welfare officers in place, but is this something you're actually enforcing with smaller companies? Is this something you check up on and ask for details of?
No, because I don't think so, do we, Rory?
No, but if it's something that I can have a chat with our managers and see if something is that I can make part of my check-in with companies in terms of kick-off projects, to make sure that's a checklist of things that they have in place.
It says in our code of practice that they must have a designated welfare officer because it's part of the standards of behaviour. But if they're maybe not reading that, I think anyone who is working for a company that they don't know who to go to complain needs to come to Rory or myself and tell them that.
Okay, that's fair. I feel like a lot of companies are often maybe one or two owners. So the complaints will always be against the owners, people that are supposed to be. So we can come to NI Screen about that if we have issue.
Yeah.
Although you might pass this on to
someone who's qualified to deal with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any intention to provide workplaces with advice on how to support include neurodivergent people?
Yep, I know we've previously engaged with organisations like Specialistern in the past.
And we will be engaging with them in the future for our recruitment, yeah.
We've done that internally, but if it's something that we can look at as an industry wide activity, that we try and provide those workshops, happy to look at that. And if it's something that people are strongly suggesting, taking a look at the questions is something people are very keen on. That's something I can definitely look into and look to deliver. If not soon, but on a regular occasion, maybe it's something that's delivered once a year, a couple of times a year, so people, there's a constant opportunity to either make yourself aware or upskill or renew your knowledge.
Apologies, because I just noticed in the chat, Brendan asks, related to the previous question, is the external HR function something NI Screen could source and fund? I know a lot of companies are only running off their NI Screen funding, so it is extremely tight.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that we could fund, but it's certainly something we could advise on who to go to.
It may be something, I know we've had previously in the Big Small a mentor whose experience was around HR, and that could be something I could look to bring back in to the Big Small as like a HR mentor that comes in semi-regularly. In terms of, again, this maybe probably alludes to another question that was mentioned, it'll maybe mentioned later, but we appreciate that the funding for NI Screen for like the lower level projects can be tight, in terms of people will start cutting things away because of there's more priorities in the project. So it's something I'm looking at in terms of, do we look at how our funding, our structure of our funding, so that it gives a bit more leeway to companies to, I know, be able to cover those overheads and other kind of non-core, other business functions around here, HR and stuff, as well as trying to be able to engage with like their staff and freelancers on more sustainable long-term basis, if that makes sense.
Is it fair to ask for there being more commitment to making this a mandatory thing in smaller companies? Because I know a lot of the abuse that goes on is in companies that still don't have the welfare officer. They don't have records of this type of thing. And so as a result, people drop out of those companies with nowhere to report.
Well, but by nature of the contracts, it is mandatory. And maybe it's a case of me making companies very aware that contractually under your funding agreement, you need to have these processes in place. And maybe it's something that it's policed more regularly, and something that needs to be evidenced more strongly on the delivery of on receiving funding. And something
just to note that, you know, we will fund and pay for as many workshops and these sort of functions and things as possible, but everything that we do we are budget limited, so it's less money that we can actually put into development for the small companies if we, you know, end up spending a huge fortune on all of these external issues.
Yep. Kitty's asking, is there a better way to follow up and make sure these are in place rather than just asking them for the word on it?
I'm open to suggestions. Like,
they do sign a contract.
That's the legally binding thing that we can use.
I mean, can I use the words of one of the helplines? Speak up. So people who are working for these companies who know that there are no procedures in place and there's no one they could go to, please speak up. Tell Rory about it.
And I will pass it on to the appropriate person.
Okay. Looking through. We can come back to that if there's any more questions, because I know that's a very important point. How do you go about promoting diversity of religion, gender, race, and sexuality in NI film and games beyond asking employers about Protestants and Catholics? Do you educate employers on benefits of diversity? I know you've talked about workshops and things, but do you have practical examples?
At the moment, no, because it's something I personally need to be working on.
And also, Rory, the cornerstone of our new strategy, which is drafted and in front of government for the next 4 years, the cornerstone of that is promoting equality and diversity within the screen industries in Northern Ireland. We've been working on this for quite a while. There is no easy answer to it, but we are we have come up with a strategy. We've been working with the BFI, we've been working with the BBC on this. We have added, you know, just small things as we've gone along before the new strategy, things like adding to the crew call. I know it's a very simple thing to say, but, you know, all the crew calls now say we welcome people from diverse backgrounds and those that are underrepresented in the film industry. We've recently brought in job sharing opportunities, and in fact, we're amending our database now. And the database will be extended to include gaming and animation crew, so that you can tick a box to job share, and that's specifically directed in getting carers and parents back into the industry if they've left because of childcaring problems. So, you know, and we're the only screen agency actually in the UK that actually is going to have that on their database, the job sharing opportunity. We also post it on all our crew all our crew calls that you can job share. We are making small steps, but a lot more needs to be done, which is why it's going to be the cornerstone of our new strategy.
But in the meantime, like when we have new calls, like funding calls or training programs, I make a concerted effort to try and reach out to various different groups. Like the last kind of, when we had restart before Christmas and stuff, like the Equality Coalition, we engaged with them trying to get word out because we wanted to attract diverse applicants, or a range of applicants. And also, that's just individuals, but companies as well. Like, I'd be keen to see people from a range of backgrounds applying for likes of mini game or platform or funding, and a lot of that's me contacting various different networks and trying to push things out. But again, if people are willing to come to Nicola, this is a better route to connect with a certain group of people, like I'm fully open to suggestions and like working with people to.
For the last 4 or 5 years, every time we advertise a trainee opportunity on our website, it automatically goes out to groups in Northern Ireland that represent people with disabilities, and charities and whoever we can think of. There is a network of organisations that we send all of our opportunities to, so that they can distribute it amongst their members.
As far as these workshops themselves, what are your diversity metrics for the workshop speakers and mentors? And can we have some commitment to transparency over the selection of speakers and rate of pay?
In terms of metrics, like it's not something we like monitor and stuff. Like I saw that question, I kind of went back over like our mentors and our workshop that we've delivered over workshops the last wee while, say in the last 2 years. Mentors, admittedly, they're all male, and that's probably down to the limitation of my own network and something I've been actively working on in terms of bringing in people who are a bit more diverse. Sorry, not a bit more diverse, a range of folks that can provide that support and are a representative of the people making games as well. So that's something I'm very conscious of and working towards, and something that was pointed out to me by people within the industry when that happened. Around workshops and stuff, it's working out roughly 50-50 of paid workshops. I'd say it's probably, I think of the 9 workshops I ran, 5 have been predominantly led by males, and there's been 4 from 4 females. We've done a couple of free workshops, which were female led. We have a couple more, but they were around more awareness around Creative Europe and a platform. But something on realizing within the mentors, I kind of the diversity of our mentors isn't as broad as it should be. It's something I've been trying to make up in terms of workshops and representation of people who are presenting workshops. In terms of workshops, like speakers and selections for workshops, it's a case of me looking around and seeing who's available. I'm happy to take suggestions on speakers for workshops. I'm conscious that a lot of the workshops I have, some of the more technical ones have been male dominated, so it'd be good to get a different background of folks working in more technical roles or leadership roles. In terms of rate of pay, like that's depending on the individual person, and like that's agree with them, and it's their rate, and it's better based on a competitive kind of quote as well.
We do have to. We are a government and arm's length, non-departmental government organisation. Everyone that we have speaking at seminars has to be procured via our guidelines. So competitive quotes, qualifications, all of that is looked at via the government's procurement procedures.
I'd also just like to add from that perspective, like, and just in case, because I didn't introduce myself. So, hi everyone, my name's Dom Shaw. I'm the EDI/Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator at Ukie. Just on that front about getting diverse speakers and mentors, it will always be a challenge because it's very interconnected with some of the matters that we've already discussed. You know, like there's a big confidence issue within the industry because of the amount of visible role models we have. You know, like when we think of neurodiversity, there is not many people who will openly say, I am dyslexic or I am autistic, you know, and be open and be in a successful role in the games industry around that. And, you know, when we think of confidence building, there are some real good talent who are from different diversity dimensions within these industries, but they just don't have either the confidence or they've been pushed back to not feel that they can have their voice heard. And I think, you know, like it's something that here at Ukie, we really want to push for, not only from a sense of responsibility, but just a general sense of engagement. I think it's not just about going into your networks and going, there's this opportunity. It's also about connecting with other networks outside of the game sphere. So a part of my role, I have a lot of conversations with just general diversity advocate groups and organizations. So Stonewall, Mermaids, Blueprints for All Autistica, all these organizations that do different areas of diversity, I'm having these ongoing conversations with them and trying to get them involved in the games industry to not only widen our perspectives, but also bring in that needed talent and that expertise from other areas of the world to really add to the brilliance of games. And I think, you know, it's as easy from one perspective of making that conversation, but it's also difficult because obviously you've got to get these things in place and get that time going. And, you know, it's very hard to do. But at the same time, that's no excuse to be able to not do it. It's something that will take time. And I think it's so vital to, again, from one perspective, build up that confidence of the talent that's in the industry who come from those different diversities to want to speak and have their voices heard. And we do that through either putting on activities to encourage and empower them. You know, may that be like, for example, through Raise the Game, we did a recent event series called Pride Chats, which took the conversation of Pride beyond June. And then, you know, talk about all different matters around the LGBTQ plus communities, so such as trans and non-binary representation. How is the presence of LGBTQ plus content in games? What is it like? Where can we improve upon it? And just all these different conversations, so people from those backgrounds, but also potential allies, can actually have those open discussions and those safe spaces that actually build that confidence. And I think that's something across the board that everyone needs to just do more of, those kind of grassroots activities that build the confidence in the current talent we have that are from those diversity backgrounds to bring their voices and make sure they are confident enough to go, actually, I want to speak about this, not because I'm from this background, but because of my expertise and where my passions lie.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer, Dom.
Can I just I'm just looking at the chat here. Tina, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, what do we do to help folks speak up? It's very easy for me to say, yeah, speak up, tell us. It is hard for people to do that. And equally, the simple idea of a standard poster template for the studios on display, telling them exactly what they should do and who they should go to, you know, make it incredibly clear. Get it up in the pixel mill, get it up wherever we can, and make it crystal clear exactly who they need to talk to if they are having a problem and they do not feel comfortable going to the person that's given them the role in the first place.
100%, I agree with that. And also, just to highlight, you know, like we've talked about within this talk a lot about like regulators and authority commissions, and I'm currently in those kind of conversations right now, as no doubtly anyone from the game space have seen. Activision's controversy of late has really brought up the conversation and really made people go, what can I get? Because without paying a lawyer tens of thousands of pounds, how can I get that basic support that should be there in the first place? And although I can't announce it right now, but Ukie is in talks with not only other games companies, but within the TV, theatre, well, the overall entertainment sector. And we're currently discussing how we can actually have this united front to build some kind of really one-stop place that people can feel not only safe to tell these issues to, but have the legal support to give them what they need. And it's something that I really wish I could tell more, but I literally had the conversation yesterday, and it's so something that we're hopefully going to announce more to the, to our industry soon. And it's so vitally needed, because even though I myself could not provide that legal support, to be able to facilitate and signpost that, the right people to the right places is so key. And I think, as Nicola has said, it's all about not only triaging, but also signposting to ensure that people are not only felt like, it's not a burden. You come to someone, even if you can't go to your employer, there are advocacy groups around the games industry that you can talk to who will signpost, or there are other individuals within companies that, like, for example, I always ensure that any conversation I have that determines a lock and key is lock and keyed, and any support I can give people goes and gets that support and signposts properly. And as an industry, we need to not do it individually. We need to come together and put these processes in place for the wider industry, so that there are places where people can feel safe and can address these issues without feeling a burden on themselves. Because who wants to report this to their CEO, who might be in on it, and then actually they lose their job and it goes all down? There should be things as an industry. We have a responsibility as an industry to support that for employees within the sector, to be able to go, actually, I really need some help. Can I go to this third-party neutral space and get that support without having to hand them over tens of thousands of pounds? And that's something that's in the works. And I'm really hoping by the end of at least a year, I can reveal it to the communities. So it's something to keep an eye on, but just know that it's something that is being worked on for sure.
And don't forget, in Northern Ireland, we have the Labour Relations Agency. You can go directly to them for advice on any problems that you're having that are labour, are to do with employment, pay, working conditions, all of that. They cover that. So yeah, I mean, Dom, that all sounds absolutely amazing, and it will be brilliant. But guys, don't forget about the organisations we do have here. And in fact, as Rory said, we need to signpost them to you. I still think the poster is a really, really good idea. Mm-hmm. We'll add more and more information to our bullying and harassment webpage, which is on the front page of our website. But we'll add more and more helplines and sort of help and advice, so that people have an easy place to go to know what to do next.
Thank you. I think a lot of the issue in Northern Ireland at the moment is that there was no education on what to do or where to go, or on those bodies at all. Coming from NI Screen, as someone who's worked at several NI Screen companies, it's never been brought up to me ever by any of my employers. And it wasn't until there was a mass email that a few people started talking about your harassment policy. So would it be fair to ask that you kind of take a look at that and reformat how you're educating?
Yep, 100%.
Absolutely. Yep.
A lot of people are asking about historical issues as well once you've left a company. Is there still opportunities to investigate harassment in that case?
Yes. I don't think there's any statute of limitation on it.
All right.
But we do need people to actually come to us and explain what the historical problems have been. I mean, we can't guarantee that there's anything can be done about them, but it doesn't stop you coming forward.
A lot of people are also worried about backlash. A lot of independent workers who are freelance, they feel as though their jobs are extremely fragile, and saying anything could immediately get them blacklisted in a very tight-knit community. Is there anything you can say about people who are worried about their future career if they come forward to you with issues?
Well, people come to us, myself or welfare officers at NI Screen, with an issue, it'll be dealt in confidence, unless the person wants to take it into a more formal setting. If it's a case they want to talk about it and make us aware of issues going on, that's totally fine. We dealt in confidence. Like, nothing will be shared with their whatever company they're working with or beyond the four walls of NI Screen. Of course, I'll raise it with Nicola and Andrew, because that's my appropriate. Well, Andrew's my line manager, so it's appropriate to make him aware. So in that case, people can bring things forward. Now, we do appreciate also, and something that I know, Nicola, it's something we have to figure out ourselves. If we have repeated, I know, like off the record kind of notices about a certain company or something, then maybe do we have to look at that. But I think the bottleneck and all of it is, unfortunately, that at some point everything has to be made official and has to be an official complaint before we can step up. and either signpost people, or we can do anything from our point of view. But like anything that comes towards me, will, like, I am neutral. There's companies and individuals and freelancers. There's no preference or leaning either way. So anyone that brings anything to me is dealt in confidentiality, especially, and including that with anyone within. If people don't feel confident coming towards me, there's also Nicola, Paula, and Andrew and Richard as well. It'll be dealt with confidence there as well.
It is a huge problem. It's a huge problem right across the industry. In fact, that broadcast article highlighted the fact that that was the biggest barrier to sorting this out, is the fact that these are freelancers. This is their income, their livelihood. This is a UK-wide problem. It's amplified 10 times in Northern Ireland because we are such a small community and everyone talks and everyone knows each other. It is a massive, massive problem to get people to come forward because they don't want to be excluded from work. But I would say you do need to speak up. You do need to go to Rory. And again, it could be a communication thing. It could be something that we can refer to the Labour Relations Agency. It could be, but come for advice, because it's the precarious life of a freelancer. It's not easy.
Yeah, again, it's something that we can look at. Well, we are looking at. Like, it has been brought up to me before by freelancers that the nature of NI screen funding unfortunately encourages short-term freelance contracts, which there's no sustainability, and it can end up companies demanding more from freelancers on little budgets. So do we look at our funding structures and either trying to change the levels so that we can give companies, when they're applying, more headroom and more runway to work with, which means they can engage with freelancers and freelancers engage with companies that they want to work with, and knowledge that there's a bit more sustainability there in terms of, like, rather than a 3-week contract, is a 3-month contract. Like, our funding, unfortunately, is not going to be all the answer, but if we can at least ease, like, that initial kind of starting on cost for a project, then we can. Like, there is a realization that the upfront cost for starting a game project is a lot different from maybe a film or a TV project. So there's that appreciation that there now, and that's something that, not in a direct way, but maybe in a direct way, that we can, I know, alleviate some of the pressure on freelancers. Sorry, Christine, your mic's on mute.
Sorry. Off the back of that, when it comes to freelancers, are NI Screen doing anything practical at the moment to safeguard them? Are they reviewing contracts, making sure that freelancers are paid? And on top of that, if we could just include recent graduates and interns that are often paired with companies through NI Screen. Are you doing anything to protect those people and make sure that they're getting paid?
So anyone who is like through a graduate placement scheme for ourselves or our trainee scheme, like, the way that works, those trainees and graduates are paid by NI Screen, and then where it's placements, companies we invoice companies and they pay us. So at the end of the day, a trainee or a graduate with us, their salary is still paid. Now, we would also raise that if they were having challenges in terms of, like, working hours, working conditions, that they come to us. I know with my trainees, I try to regularly check in with them. But also the other cases, I know we have trainees and graduates who may move on, but the door is always open, like, to come back and have a discussion about things that might not be going on, like, that might not be an ideal situation. In terms of checking in with companies, that's more difficult. That's a resource, kind of like, how regularly do we check in with them, like, time with that there, and maybe there's something to look in there, but it's a very resource intensive kind of, that we regularly check in companies and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, the quickest way that we resolve those issues is people speaking up, and, like, which is an equally difficult, it's a catch-22 situation, but it's something I can look into ever some kind of.
And yeah, and in terms of wages, it's against the law not to pay the minimum wage. So they're already in contravention of the contract they've signed with us if they've done that. But I think they have. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rory. Isn't it being discussed at the minute that we are specifically spelling that out in our contract rather than just saying, you must not break the law? We're actually specifically spelling out what that all includes, which I think is paying minimum wage.
Yeah, so we're clearly stating that we expect that people employed on an ice cream project, at least minimum wage, maybe ideally national living wage, but that's dependent on what we are allowed to put into the contract.
Yeah, that's fair. Thank you. I know historically companies have had to give lists of their expenses and things.
Mm.
Have you ever gone through a process of checking how much each employee or freelancer is receiving and whether that does break the law? Is that something you actually look through and check?
In terms of like looking at like time cards and stuff and matching time cards against like invoices for paying freelancers?
Well, just a sense of even often invoices or say daily rate, and low pay gets disguised through that. I think is it like potentially possible to just check and make sure people are actually paying?
Something for us to look at, maybe, Nicola. Like I don't have an answer right now, Christine. I understand what you're saying. Is they are stated on the contract what a freelancer is actually doing, and it's the case that we go and speak to a freelancer and speak to them that way. But that's currently not part of our processes at the moment. Like when we receive like vouching in for projects, it's based on, we look at invoice and then what's paid to the freelancer. Now, I appreciate that what may be on the invoice is a day rate, but in reality you may have said 8-hour day rate, but in reality you may have done like a 12-hour day, and like how do we validate that? And that's a difficult gap for us to kind of investigate. But unless Nicola,
I think that's another labor relations thing. I'm not sure we can tell companies how much they have to pay their freelancers as long as they're not breaking the law, unfortunately, because they have a budget that they need to, to bring the project in at, because that's what they've raised the funding for. So yes, I mean, I get complaints quite a lot from freelance crew that they're not getting maybe what's called the BEC2 rate. And there is no obligation within the law to pay a BEC2 rate.
But again, this may come back down to treating this at a higher level in terms of, I know NSREAN has provided training in the past around production management and budgeting and stuff, but is that something that's interrogated more at an application level in terms of we interrogate those budgets and go, is this truly a realistic budget, and look at that level, but then also with training as well, and going, look, are we giving people especially in these like production, like scheduling training for a larger project is slightly different, it's completely different for a smaller team, and maybe that's something that we look at as well. But yeah, that's
certainly something we advise on the very low budget feature films and TV shows. We will look at it and say, can you realistically deliver this show on this budget? And, will you be able to get the crews to work for those particular rates for their grades and their experience? Because if you can't, then we can't fund this because you're not going to deliver the project.
On the note of placements, are there guidelines in place for companies for how much work they're given, relevant to the amount of pay that they gain?
As in the trainees, like how much work they're supposed to do?
Yeah.
Are these the trainees on our schemes?
Yes.
They're contracted to 40-hour weeks. Is that correct, Nicola? If I remember correctly. So
our craft and technical skills people are contracted to 60-hour weeks, but I think your trainees are contracted to 40. Yeah.
40. So what I would say there, and I would emphasize this, and maybe I'll do it differently. If our trainees are finding that they're consistently working beyond 40 hours in a week, to come to me, like, and I would, because on trainee contracts, it's there to the benefit of the individual, not the company. It's there for their development, not the success of that company. So if an individual's development's being impacted by working consistently long unsociable hours, then I personally want to know, and I will personally deal with that, because
100%. If they are on our schemes, then we will, Rory will be straight in there to say this is too much.
Does NIScreen have any policies or guidance for general internships?
Don't work for free.
Written into the contracts, that is official guidance.
I don't think we've ever looked at that before, but if that's maybe again alongside that, like the poster template mentioned earlier on, if that's a simple thing, can I go and look, this is the expectations for what an internship look should be, then maybe that's something that we can work with industry to both freelancers and people within the community and companies go, okay, what's a reasonable expectations for an internship, guidance along that there. But outside of our schemes, we've nothing official, but maybe that's a simple win that can help with that.
That's possibly something that Ukie could look at, advice, because I know that the film and TV sort of websites like Beck2 have advice, Screen Sales have advice on what to expect in an internship, and the very fact that you shouldn't be working for free, and what you should expect and what you should ask of an internship. So maybe that's something that Ukie could do for the the gaming industry.
Absolutely. I mean, we're already like trying to do those efforts. So, for example, one of the early questions were getting more neurodiverse diversity individuals in. I myself have got dyslexia and I'm also Asperger's. So I'm really passionate about this area of diversity dimension. And what's been really nice is we've been working with one of our Ukie student members called Brunel University and another partner called Ambitious About Autism. And what we've been doing with them is actually developing an internship that not only gives those autistic students the equity to get onto the same level as other students, but also it's been kind of working on actually what should these students expect in an internship overall. And it's something we're hoping to turn into some written guidance, because I've definitely been in situations myself, maybe not an internship, but I've definitely been in a role where, it's been absolutely horrible, where you've worked for 5 months on the promises of you're going to get paid eventually, and actually when you eventually get paid, it's much less than you should be paid. Like, I used to work for a company, did a 40+ hour weeks for them, didn't get paid for 5 months. When I finally did, I got £400 less a month than the average employee standards. And although that's a horrible situation, I've definitely learned from that. And I've highlighted that to the people working within our student kind of resources about, like, this is something that just can't be allowed. Like, we need to advise this upcoming generation that they have rights and they need to know their rights, because actually there are so many like passionate people who are going to be like, oh no, I'm just doing it because I'm going to get experience and exposure. And it's like, no, you deserve better. You are valued. You have a voice that needs to be heard. And I think, again, I definitely take that on I think that's the right thing. Take it on the chin. That definitely we need to make that material more clear, but it is something we are working on, and it's through these projects such as the what we called it, the employee autism internship, but also working with partners to encourage better internship opportunities, because again, voices need to be heard, and people of all backgrounds, regardless if they've just started their first year of uni or if they're a veteran in industry, everyone has value, and they need to know actually their value is beyond worth.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just looking through some of the questions in the chat here. We don't have a lot of time left. Asking, is it possible to attach funding to attendance at these workshops, rather than just being something that the companies individually sign up for?
It's something we can, I'm not quite, it's not something I can answer right now, but maybe we look at it, but I don't know.
I think it's certainly something. I think it's certainly something that we should do. And we'll certainly look at that. Yeah, I think it's a very good suggestion.
I know in the past you had your HR mentors and things, and a lot of companies have just decided not to go to the meetings. I feel like you can have as many resources for these company owners and spend a lot of money on it, but a lot of them will just ignore that, and as a result, won't improve.
Rory wouldn't be aware of this, but we have a chaperone training type course around children's legislation on child licensing, and we made it part of our contracts not so long ago. Well, no, that's 3 years ago, along with the Education Authority, that all ADs must have attended this training, or they're not allowed to be employed in our funded productions, because it's to do with child licensing and looking after the welfare of children, and the ADs need to be across this, so they have to attend it and they have to update their training every year. And the production, it is actually in the production's contract that they do this. So yeah, a lot of productions will pass over an AD for a job because they haven't completed our training. So yeah, I think it's definitely something we could look at.
I think even coming into the new strategy, Nicola, if it's something that we can front load in terms of the end of this strategy and go, look, we expect people to have companies to have completed this training, because ahead of, I'm talking hypotheticals, ahead of the new strategy, that we'll be expecting companies to have these things in place.
It's in the company's best interest as well. They need to be aware of these things. They can be blundering, around and, breaking the law sometimes without even realizing it. And, it would really do them a lot of good to be aware of what their responsibilities are.
I mean, just on that note as well, just the fact that because the industry is so small, actually that can work to a disadvantage to some of these companies, because if someone hears about those young talent being, abused, as in work in employment perspectives, those that are trying to make best practice will make that clear to the others within their networks. And, I'm not saying that's the only way, but it is something to sometimes bluntly say to people, actually, we need to come together and expect better from each other. And it doesn't matter if it's a big company or a small company, we all have a responsibility, especially with talent. The games industry has a real issue with retaining talent. And, the way to do that and improve that is through education, training, and having systems in place. And that's one thing that I know from the work I'm doing at the moment. I'm trying to build a toolkit for games companies of these best practices, because having that visible to them and all in one place gives them less excuse to do bad practice.
Thank you. I do feel like a lot of what happens goes behind closed doors, and a lot of what companies put out themselves can be performative. Whereas what's actually happening with their employees is a whole nother thing entirely. So I think having they have to attend these events. They have to prove that they're treating their employees well. They have to prove that they have these welfare officers in place and that there's a procedure for that doesn't result in someone losing their job. I think would be very comforting for people in the industry at the moment. And perhaps having a look at that on the NI screen side and reworking a different approach, because as they stand, there is a lot of abuse going on and nobody feels free to talk about it. So I do feel like maybe having a look at the current procedures is worth it.
And I think we all have to share responsibility. It's not up to Ukie, it's not up to Northern Ireland Green, it's not up to you guys. It's up to us all to work together to resolve these problems and to find a way forward to make everyone comfortable, to talk about these issues and to make sure you come forward when there are problems, and hopefully the problems can be resolved easily.
Of course. Unfortunately, it's the people with the money who have the more authority in this situation. So making it as easy as possible for people who are on the very bottom to come forward, I feel like is an effort that needs to be taken.
Can I just clarify, because it is alarming to hear that abuse is going on. Are we talking about bullying, harassment, or sexual abuse? Or, one thing I would be very, very clear about, if it's sexual abuse or sexual harassment of any sort, the first port of call should be the police. Because that would be very, that's very distressing to hear that this abuse is going on, and we do need to hear about it.
I think mistreatment of workers happens in every industry, and it's naive to assume that if you don't hear about it, it's not happening, because of course it's going to be happening behind closed doors. So I think it's always better.
But we need to hear about it. We really aren't psychic. We do need people to come forward. And you know, they can come forward confidentially to Rory, but we do need people to come forward.
And like, just to reiterate, like, my email is there, and like, if people, my work number, and that's reachable outside of work hours. Like, if people need to send an email when they're at work, or they want to have a conversation outside of work hours, that's totally fine. That's something I'm open to having conversations when people feel they're in a safe space to have a conversation. And like, my email address is fairly simple, Rory at Northern Screen. Mobile number, happy to share that with work mobile number, happy to share it with folks. And look, whatever helps people in a comfortable space to come forward and have a chat. And I understand even the first conversation, people may not want to put anything in informal, in a sense of a formal complaint. But again, we're happy to work with people a long time to help them feel they're in a space where they can feel confident coming forward in a formal sense. So just to reiterate, people can come to me, and like, and any kind of issue as well. This is be bullying and harassment, anything that goes beyond that. But also, again, really iterate when it comes to like graduates and interns and work placements. Like, even with all the enthusiasm in the world, if someone's taking advantage of your enthusiasm to make you work long working hours, that's still not acceptable. And it isn't a case that you're rocking a boat by coming towards me, even confidentially, and not something formally. I genuinely open to that, and would like people to come forward.
And I would just like to add, it's not only important about people expressing openness, like having key leaders like Rory and Nicola expressing that is amazing, but also just from all of our ends, it's that visibility and that signposting to services is so key. Because actually, if we, you know, like, there's a few comments about the being psychic and such, and like how some of the comments have also spoke about, like, we encourage speaking up, but it is absolutely understandable. That's so hard to do, you know, like, not everyone can speak up. And so as alternatives, we need to ensure, from, again, that signposting perspective, but also just a general, like, these resources are clear and open to people, because sometimes someone is such in a dark place, you know, they're looking at the computer thinking, you know, that if you type in even just SUC on Google, there are so many, like, I'm not saying this is a game specific, but there's so many Google searches that come up around suicide, which is horrible. This is where, you know, as us within these positions within the game industry, it's so vital for us to be ensuring that we make it clear there's these mental health resources, there are these welfare resources. You can not only come to us, but there's these advocacy groups, you know, ensuring those options, choices to not only there to make proactive engagement, but also there so that those that feel almost passive always have the option to click on those resources and look them up and see them. That visibility and that clear, accessible signposting are going to be key to what our industries need. And it's something that I myself am trying to push for Raise the Game content. You know, I don't want people to go, you know, where can I go for this mental health support? And I'm just like, it's like I'm building lists and I'm working with partners to ensure actually we've got all these resources. Here's some, but if you still need to talk to someone, there's that options and choices, just like in the games we make, and why people love games, because there's that activity and that choice we need to present within our working processes.
Thank you, Dom. I think it's very important to keep in mind how hard it is to actually speak up, especially if you feel as though your job is on the line and your place in the industry is at risk, especially as a freelancer. So I really do appreciate that. And I appreciate NI Screen keeping that in mind if they are going to refactor their policies, and just making everyone clear what the policies are and the procedures are. I don't think there is necessarily an example of a positive time someone has come forward about abuse and positive action has been taken. And I think really whoever does come forward and goes through those procedures feels like they are on uncertain ground because they can't point to a previous example of that.
Well, that's, it's not true of Northern Ireland Screen of a whole, because I've dealt with 3 bullying and harassment complaints in the last 3 weeks alone. And we also had one on a short film in the last 2 months. And through mediation, it was sorted relatively quickly. Apologies were made and it was sorted out. The 3 I'm dealing with at the minute are confidential, but I am dealing with them. So it's, we've changed the wording on the bullying and harassment page to make it very clear that it includes you guys. We had digital content before, and possibly that wasn't clear enough to say that this includes gaming, interactive, everything else. So we've changed that. We're changing the brochure as well. We'll look at signposting it as clearly as we can. One of the reasons we brought it to the front page and pinned it to the front page was 4 months ago when the whole Noel Clark thing happened. We wanted to make sure that people could actually see it on the front page of our website. But we accept that, and I still think the poster idea, people need to be, if they're in a bit of a state, they need to be able to just glance at something and see an easy place that they can go to. Because as Dom said, it's not easy to think straight when you're in a state like that and you're trying to Google something or whatever. So we need to make the signage clear within the workplace as well.
And folks, even just from my perspective, like I've learned a lot of our procedures in the last kind of week to 10 days. And if people come towards me with a complaint or an issue, that procedure will be followed to a T. They will be taken in the appropriate manner. So just to reiterate, I know to a certain extent we're preaching to the converted here, but folks who go down that route, it'll be handled in our full procedure going forward from now on.
Thank you. Apologies for running over time. We still had a lot of questions, but a lot of them were asked kind of under the understanding that NI Screen had authority to investigate situations like this, and I think now that that's been cleared up, that's probably an answer to a lot of those questions. But if people do have more questions, are you happy to answer them through email or publicly?
Yeah, 100%. Like if people want to have, like, there's a few other questions that came up there around just kind of different bits and pieces. NIGDN, like if you folks want to invite me back again and you're working together, happy to talk to you because you folks as a group. Like I understand NIGDN is more trying to formalize some of the stuff that's doing. And with that, we're looking. I'm aware that we have the policies that we expect from organizations we're dealing with from a third party point of view. So, like in terms of working with NIGDN, we'll make sure that that's an open and fair process as well. And of course, people can reach out to us. Once we made some of the questions about the Pixamill and stuff, I understand when I started, Pixamill was a bit of a stressful place to work. And we've been working to make that a more a headspace where people can come and work, where people are pulled along rather than pushed along, if that makes sense, in the nicest possible way. But they're supportive. It is a space open to, I know at the moment, companies, but it's a space I hope to open to the freelancers that they can come in and work and have access to in the future. And hopefully people, as things open up in COVID, it can be a space that people can come and have a conversation in. But yes, if anyone ever wants to have a talk, more follow-up questions in person, via email, or DM me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. Happy, whatever medium suits people.
Thank you. I'm going to pass back on to Keelan here if he's there. Is he there?
Sorry, mute there. Thanks, Rory, Nicola, and Dom for coming. I don't know if you have any final points other than what you've just said to close off on.
Just again, keep, as I'm going to say to a lot of you folks, keep at me if you see me dropping off and stuff. I'm happy to be pointed out to me. If people have suggestions of things that we can be doing, I feel I'll be definitely following up with Dom after this. I've dealt with Ukie, maybe not Dom in a certain extent, but following up with there with some of the stuff he's doing. But every stuff that people feel that could be interesting we can be doing through the Pixamill. Happy to take those ideas on board, and if we have the capacity and the resources, we'll make it work. But yeah, please feel free to come forward with ideas.
Just thank you to everyone. It's a huge subject to cover in an hour, so I think those questions were really, really worthwhile.
And I would just like to equally say, like, it's so vital to keep the conversation going and keeping people accountable. I think, as Rory said, like, I'm fairly new to the Ukie structure, and that was because of the amount of EDI work I brought to Ukie. They actually had to, they thought to themselves, actually, we need to be accountable of this work. And it's so vital to the industry that my role as EDI coordinator was created only in December. So it's a fairly new role. And some questions earlier talked about welfare officers and EDI officers. And I think bigger companies are obviously able to do that quicker. But it's definitely, that's why, like, for example, the work I do for Raise the Game pledge, that's so vital for me to get to people, because actually by companies signing up to that pledge, they get access to me, and I can completely connect them with not only the community but others, services and approaches. And that's not just saying me, but there's I know if I can't help someone, I can connect them to the right people. And I think it's so vital that as an industry we not only discourage siloing, but we empower knowledge sharing, coming together more. And lastly, please do feel free to connect with me either on LinkedIn, Twitter. My email is dom@ukie.org.uk. As the host will do their final speech, I'll put it in the comments just so people got it. But I have absolutely appreciated this time. I've loved what Rory and Nicola have had to say, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Rory in particular, how can people reach out to you if they want to chat or if they want to report something?
I'm literally about to put my email in the chat here. Okay, let me pick my work mobile. There you go. That's my work mobile going into the chat as well, if people rather pick things up by text or call. So feel free to copy that and have it in the NIGD and Discord as well.
Will do. Well, yeah, thank you all of you for coming. Obviously, we've talked a lot today about industry and practices and companies. We, as a community and as an organisation, especially if we run events and stuff, have a lot to do in terms of safeguarding and whatnot. I know there were a couple of questions in there around what we are doing. There will be more conversations around that going forward. Hopefully, in the near future, we can have another event like this to sort of discuss how we can improve things in the community front, because goodness is needed. But yeah, for now, yeah, just thank you to all the speakers for coming and giving up your time to answer the questions for everyone.
Thank you, folks. Thanks, Christina, as well.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.